Hey, Robbie. How are you? Anything new in your life these days, or?
Well, I mean, in this moment, there's something new in my life happening.
Let's see. If I turn like this, can I match your artwork in the back?
That's true. Actually, we didn't even plan that out. Look at this. Wow.
He's
back.
We're back.
He's back.
We're back. Okay. I got this. You talk for a second. How are you? Tell me about your life. I got to take this off. So you talk for a second.
Well, okay. I wasn't going to kick it off this way, but since you're giving me the chance, I am so excited to talk about Daredevil in a second. But I have to say, because last night, Candace and I watched the most recent episode of Severance.
Oh my gosh.
And dude, I think we both independently said it might be the single best episode of television we've ever seen.
Severance, I think, is my favorite show ever, which is a crazy hot take. It's really early to say that. Let's do another Friends from Work Plus episode on it, because we're in peak television era right now, man.
Dude.
I was watching the Golden Globes and I saw that, or the SAG Awards, I saw that Penguin people won. I'm just thinking back now, like I had Penguin, I rewatched Severance season 1, Silos, Severance season 2. Now we have Daredevil starting. This has been fun for me, and I'm not a show guy.
No, I'm not either. Like, I'm always, Candace and I both are always kind of movie people over TV, and in part because it's just kind of easier to like watch and finish a movie than try to get invested in a whole multi-season thing.
No doubt.
But we have suddenly found ourselves watching like a show every night of the week. Like, we're now in the spot where there are things coming out almost every day of the week that we're super invested in, either together or individually. Because also Invincible is on right now, which we haven't talked about on the podcast. But that show
your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man was awesome.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. The 7th episode of Severance was special. I think if you're watching the show just wanting answers to things, kind of like Lost style, which I don't think that many people are watching it for just that, then maybe it's moving a little slow. But I love living in the world so much, and how artistic the whole thing is. Like that 7th episode, like the approach they took from every angle. I love living in that world. But it's hard for you to bring that up right after I was literally dressed as Daredevil 2 seconds ago.
I know, but you gave me oxygen, and I had to do it. I can't stop thinking about it.
That's so true.
But
welcome to Friends from Work, everybody. This is a podcast about all things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and for so long we didn't know if we could say that about Daredevil, and officially we can say a podcast about all things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including Daredevil. Hosted by me, Kyle Sconowell, my longtime friend from work, Robbie Earl. We're excited to have you here. Get involved. This is going to be a fun era. This is going to be a really awesome 8 to 10 weeks in podcast world, because the light at the end of this tunnel is the Daredevil finale and then Thunderbolts. And then by the time Thunderbolts releases, I'm sure all hype will turn to Fantastic Four. We're already starting to see some Doomsday stuff. So in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is a great time to be jumping on board. But then, over on Friends from Work Plus, we're also getting into things like the Penguin and Severance, just because it's also so good. So we got to be talking about it on different fronts here. So welcome. We're excited to have you here. This has been a long time coming. So for those of you who don't know, Robbie and I got access to all 9 episodes of Daredevil early, but we really had a moral struggle or dilemma with that, because there's such a joy in drawing it out and going week to week with our listeners. Part of me is like, even if I had just watched all 9 this weekend, I think I would have been super bummed that it's over that fast. Like, I want this to take all of April, like have a weekly thing. Oh, I'm done with work. I get home. Now I get to watch something. I want that, not, oh, I've seen this already. So we watched the first 2 episodes, and we're here recording today. And then we're going to watch the 3rd episode early and record then. So nothing we say is beyond anything you guys already know. So there are no spoiler alerts other than anything for episode 1 and 2, which is going to be really, really fun. And I think I told you I might go to episode 4 just for fun, and then not record an episode, but just pause, just having seen that one.
Man, I know. I
All
don't know if I'm going to
nine-
be able to stop myself now.
All 9 is such a unique approach, right? We've never
Yeah.
had that happen before. And
Yeah.
we talk about this all the time, but you can kind of analyze how people feel about things based on these little clues. And I wonder what that tells you. Does that tell you that they're so confident that they want you to see the whole project before reviewers say anything?
Or does it mean that they want you to have seen enough, to have like the payoff? Like sometimes I feel like we've gotten more, like Moon Knight, I felt like was a great example of like they wanted you to have
it was perfect
through
though,
the
right?
4th episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, except for you, because you didn't get to watch the last one.
Yeah.
But like it was the perfect, like you think it's this kind of show, and then you get the real like Benson Moorhead, like trippy episode, and it really changes the way you view what that show is doing and also kind of how high the ceiling can be. So I don't know but I mean, I think it's the first one. Just based on how good the show is, I think it's the first one.
Here's how I want to start today's episode. If you're just finding this podcast, we are the podcast that loves to celebrate loving things. So we're not too cool for school. Like we love this stuff. And so mostly I'm just going to say positive things.
So many years in school, man.
Yeah.
Cannot be too cool for it.
Can't go back again. Here's the thing. That being said, there are different levels of passion for me. And so much of this show is built off your knowledge of something and my passion of something. And if I'm not passionate about it, I can't fake it. And this podcast was birthed on both of us walking out of Avengers Endgame and me just being like, I have to talk to somebody about this. Like maybe Robbie would like this. Who can I talk to about this movie about? And so I called you. Well, those calls have become some of my favorite things. Like whenever I shut something off, like Severance, and go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. I need to tell somebody. It's so fun when we get to do that. Well, full transparency. We try not to talk about these episodes before we record them. This was an exception. I watched the first episode of Daredevil Born Again, and at 17 minutes in, I called you. You didn't answer. At 36 minutes in, I paused it. You didn't answer. And I then made a social media reaction 36 minutes into the first episode.
Yes.
And then that night, after watching one episode, I called you because I felt that feeling again. I felt that WandaVision feeling of like, I need to talk to somebody about this. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and not that we have to get into the comparison game, but I think I felt that way more so here than I did even for at least the start of WandaVision. Like I remember there are certain episodes I vividly remember you and I having immediate conversations about, because I remember where we were living at the time and me like taking this long walk with us trying to figure out like who fake Pietro was and what was going on. And but even then it was like that show, there was some kind of like mystery box thing. Like how are they here? What happened? And that was the big driving thing. But I don't know that I felt like I had to call you to talk about just how good it was. Like, even though it was good, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't, there was something about this that like just the quality of the thing that we were watching and how much we like, it's something that we love already. It was just like it was like a perfect storm of like in the best way.
I'm going to get cheesy. I don't know what came over me. I had a long work day. I didn't watch this until Thursday after a 4-day work week. And it was like 3:30 and I shut off. I'm in my studio and I shut off all my music stuff and I turned off the lights and I have my good speakers and I'm by myself and I turned off all the other monitors so that nothing was taking my attention. I put my phone away and I just sat down and I started watching Daredevil. And we get to the obvious shocking moment of Foggy dying and the way they executed it, where Matt, and we'll talk about this in a second, but the way Matt is hearing his heartbeat as he's fighting Dex, and we get to the very top of the roof and Matt hears the heartbeat stop and he just screams like, why, and throws him off the building. Like, and the murder is so out of cold blood. It's like, it is a feeling of why, like, I can't understand why you would do this. So I just felt that so heavily. And then it goes to the credits and it's the same Daredevil theme, but with like, a slower, more cinematic version of it. And then it's these statues crumbling. It's just kind of a really creative start. And in about 36 minutes in, like it's them wrestling with the loss of Foggy, Matt moving on. And I don't know why. It just hit me, dude. Like I just felt it. I posted a video where like, I didn't try to do this, but you watch the video on social media, my eyes are kind of like glossy, a little teared up. I'm like, something about the setting. I was like, this is really working. So I don't know, man. I'll get through all the reasons why I think it was working, but my overarching thing was I was just moved.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to, I can start us with,
please.
I had some kind of big high level takeaways, a big three, if you will.
Okay.
And so my first one was just the introduction of the Daredevil Netflix mythology into the wider MCU, like you were saying, is handled so well, specifically in two ways. It's like a pacing thing and it's a tone where I think those are two of the areas where the Netflix show could sometimes excel, like be really, really great. But I also feel like those were areas where it could, like when the show wasn't as good, it was because those things, they were almost leaning too much into it. Like what was great about Daredevil season 1, for instance, was the kind of slow burn and watching him come into his own as the hero and watching Fisk kind of like gain power, but also ultimately topple. It was this sort of like watch it in stages. But there were also some moments where because of the slow burn of that, it dragged. And by the same token, the show was so great because it was so grim and dark and street level and broody. And we love that. And we love the show for that. But sometimes it was like so
oppressive.
Indulgent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just kind of like, okay, like this is not actually a fun show to watch.
Yeah.
Because I'm so in it. And this show has managed to capture, I think, the best, like the highs of the Netflix era in terms of the seriousness, the pacing where it feels like you're kind of watching something unfold organically, but mixing that with what Marvel Studios has always done really well on the pacing and tone front, which is like you build things, but in a way that kind of keeps you like it moves not choppily, also organically, but in a way that's just like it's fun. Like you're engaged. You never really know what the next thing is. It's kind of funnier, moving into like the tonal camp. It's like they found a way to merge these things that could have been disparate. And I think a lot of Daredevil fans probably thought would maybe be contradictory in a way that I think actually is the best of both worlds, which is to say, like, I think that because of that marriage, this has the potential to be the best Marvel Disney Plus series, full stop, if they're able to kind of maintain that balancing act.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is the direction, because I think at this point, Benson and Moorhead, they're joining my short list of directors that I would watch kind of just no matter what. And I need to go back and dive through some of their older catalog. But I think, I'm not saying they're the next Russo brothers or anything, but I think Marvel is right to lean into that. Like, they shot a shotgun shot of all these different things sprayed out. And they were spending a few years kind of finding what worked and what didn't work. Well, I think they are correct in focusing on, okay, this team works. So let's keep giving them stuff. Now, I'm not saying give them the next Avengers film, but I would consider, if they want to keep going, I'd consider not only the second season of Daredevil, but something else. I'd consider a movie. I'm with you.
Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah, like for real though. For real. Because they like the sci-fi thing too. So doing something kind of trippy would be pretty cool. Yeah.
I do want to say before we move off of Benson and Moorhead, I noticed that the second episode was not directed by them, which I actually found kind of reassuring because I thought the second episode totally maintained the quality from the first for me. So I mean, they are executive producers also, so I'm not taking away from their contributions, but it's nice that it's not like a situation where if they're not directing the episode, you're going to feel a quality dip necessarily.
I think that's just becoming more and more the norm. Even Severance, I just saw episode 7 was not directed by Ben Stiller. It was the cinematographer's first ever directing episode. I'm listening to that podcast.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's just more the normal that on these series you don't cover all of it, but I don't know all the behind the scenes of how much that means they have their hands on it. Like, are they still there every single day of shooting? I'm guessing so, or at least most of it.
At least what wasn't already shot.
The thing that I felt like they nailed right off the bat, I literally took a note that I thought in the first, I'm not kidding, 30 seconds, they did such a spectacular job of getting me in right away. I talked about in our Saga So Far episode that when I was making the clips for our video on YouTube, there was a little bit of a intrepidation of going back and getting back into that world. I love Daredevil season 3, but going back and grabbing these clips, I found a little more tiring than even what it was for Brave New World, like going back through the Incredible Hulk. So I kind of talked about that. I was shocked at how fast I was back in within 30 seconds. And it's so subtle, but just, I thought the simple decisions of the music that was playing in the first 30 seconds to just start the thing with like a more epic version. You know what I mean by the music being a little more kind of slower, cinematic and epic, like less kind of focused. And they just start with some shots of New York, like B-roll, and they slowly pan the camera. But because it's shot in New York, the B-roll of New York starts making it feel just so tangible. And then it pans down slowly to the Nelson, Murdoch, and Page sign. And then they come outside and they're just kind of casually talking with all the sound effects of New York. It's like not dialed into their... but when you finally hear their dialogue, I just instantly felt like the chemistry was such an improvement over 2015, that first season, where they were still figuring it out, which makes sense. But something about the way that started, by the time Matt says, well, the city has other ways to protect itself, and smiles actually, versus like, because again, he doesn't have to hide it from them anymore like he had to back in the day. I just thought that shot, then it like zooms out to kind of like an upbeat rock song. I was like, okay, like we're not only back, it's back. And like you're saying, it's also embracing subtle changes that I think are for the better.
Yeah. Like, and there's a polish there that I think a lot of people thought could be a negative from Marvel, that, because that first season of Daredevil, the shaky cam is so intense sometimes, and not shaky cam like on the hallway fight scenes, the like just sort of loose handheld feeling where sometimes the camera just doesn't focus.
Okay, and this is going to sound so stupid, okay? Really nerdy. As I was making those clips, though, I noticed that some of those clips I recorded from 2015, they don't translate as well to my YouTube video because so many scenes are like so dark that you can't see what's going on. There's something with the quality actually that's a little bit, again, the camera work and that stuff is fun and it adds to the grim tone. Yeah. And I like that, the grit. But I think that this is the right balance, which is like when you now compare it to, like in that video, I had 2015 Daredevil and then I had a She-Hulk shot. And there's something about the She-Hulk shots that at times, I'm not saying the CGI, I'm just saying there is a polish that is a little more desirable to me at times. So there's got to be a happy medium. And I feel like the shot of like Matt and Fist talking at the diner is like the perfect happy medium. Go back and watch how gritty it still is. There's a filter on the film grain. There's like a film grain filter on the camera that makes it very like gritty, but the lighting's a little bit better and kind of cooler. You can see the cars passing through the window and the outside, and it just feels a little bit more polished, but not in a way that you're losing some of the, does that make sense?
No, totally. There are two things there too. I thought, one, I really like how much daylight we're getting here. Like we don't have that many of those in the original series. I mean, you do when they're going to court and stuff, but in terms of like so much of it is happening at night in like some kind of wharf setting.
That's what I mean. It's physically hard to see.
Yeah. So I'm with you there. And I also think that there's something about the way the show from the very beginning, like that scene you're talking about where it's kind of flashing between them walking and like these noises around the city. there's something where they're trying to make you immediately feel like you're in this New York. It's something where it's like they're, because of all the crowd stuff, because of what they wind up doing with like the BB Urich stuff, like they're really trying to bring out a feeling that I think the comics have always evoked, which is like Matt is really tied to New York, like Matt and Fisk. Like that is not just like where they live the way that like Superman and Lex Luthor live in Metropolis. And it's not even really where they live the same way that even like Spider-Man lives in New York.
Or I was going to say like Tony Stark in Avengers Tower. Like you don't think of that as much of like his home, for example.
And it's like, you do think of New York as Spider-Man's home. But the reason I make the distinction is like Spider-Man is not out there saying like, I'm fighting for my city. Like he's not out there talking about like, the cultural shifts, and like he's saving people and he lives in New York. But like Daredevil, in Fisk, it's always this battle for the soul of the city. And I think introducing that right from the get-go really starts to make it feel like a fleshed out world.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Do you want to do your second thing real quick, or do you want to keep going? Okay, you do your second thing.
Well, I think the other thing that I've really loved here is it's doing what I praised Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man for, speaking of that earlier, which is combining all these different elements from the high points of Spider-Man's comic history in often kind of new and unexpected ways. But then it's like, oh, yeah, like this happened, 20 years earlier in the comics than this other thing over here. But if they had happened in the same story, that actually would have worked really well. This is doing that, but it's even better, mostly because Daredevil comics are generally better than Spider-Man comics, as someone that loves both of them. Daredevil, like we've talked about before, is known for having one of the most consistently excellent runs for decades. And I was coming into this thinking, like earlier when you were talking about Matt kind of being lighter, I was wondering, they've done 3 seasons on Netflix. They've explored a lot of kind of famous Daredevil moments in those series. And now we've kind of gotten this like lighthearted Daredevil that we saw in She-Hulk. And I was just wondering, like, are we going to retread the same ground that we've now covered, it seems, a few times? Is it going to feel like the She-Hulk Daredevil appearance was so much like the outlier that then we come back and it's reset and it's super gritty again? And I think what's impressive is like, one, that's not the case. Like for the reason you said,
the answer is no.
Yeah, like the tone fits. It makes the Daredevil stuff in She-Hulk make so much sense without pulling away from what they're doing in Netflix, and yet
he's not like a goofball here or anything.
Right.
But just the fact that you even see Daredevil like going on a date, for example, feels a little more in step with what we got there.
And that's a piece of it. But I think that what I love about that is a lot of it's coming from the show really legitimately mining these great comics from across the character's era. Like it's like the Frank Miller stuff, which has obviously already been explored a ton. But here it's like we see like this Matt Murdock, we finally see successful. Like he's admired. He's borderline famous.
He has a great office.
Yeah, no, it's like and that's the thing, like in the comics for so long, like we have all these like, let's tear Daredevil down stories. And I'm sure ultimately the series will do that because that's kind of what you have to do with the character. But part of the reason they can do that is like Born Again, the comic starts with Matt at sort of the height of his power socially. Like Matt Murdock in the Marvel Comics universe is kind of a celebrity lawyer himself. Like he's a big deal. And then Daredevil is his own like alter ego that's the famous superhero. But so you see Fisk take Matt down by like taking all those things from him. Whereas like in the Netflix series, he never really got the chance to be in a great spot before he got broken down.
Good. In the first season, he's really poor. They have no clients. That's a hole in the wall. Then he gets taken down. Yeah. Yeah.
And the second season, he's like struggling to balance everything.
Elektra shows up and the Punisher and what he's going to do. And then, third season, he's like the lowest of the low, not even Daredevil anymore. By the way, the third season's still unbelievable. So we'll see how this turns out. Like, that's the thing. Yeah, never mind. Sorry. Not going to get on that tangent.
But no, it's like, it's fun to see that. Like, that's reflected from like the Frank Miller stuff, but also like the Brian Bendis stuff, and even like Mark Waid that we talked about them pulling from the She-Hulk appearances. Like the introduction of Kirsten McDuffie, who's a Mark Waid character who
really? That's a comic character. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like in the Mark Waid run, they like she's a lawyer and they are dating for a long time, and it's like a whole.
This is the girl from Severance, right? The girl that Mark goes on a date with in Severance in season 1.
Yes,
that's
okay.
her, right?
I couldn't figure out what I recognized her from.
It took me like an hour, and I was really thinking, I know her. How do I know her? It's and not just one date. Like, she's kind of his girlfriend for, they go to that concert in the first season. That's her. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. So that's Kirsten. And I mean, that's a kind of a fan favorite character. And I'm curious to see if they go that route with it eventually, or if they keep it just as the platonic thing, which I'd be fine with. But it's like, that's something that they're pulling from like a run that you would not even think that they're adapting here. But then it's also like, I love the version of Fisk that we get. That's this kind of like sincere, but proud and still deeply violent. Like he actually does want to succeed as mayor. He's not trying to do anything nefarious, but he has this thing under the surface. And like, that's straight from like the Bendis Zdarsky stuff, which are different eras. And then even the way that the show is exploring like the legal like the actual kind of realistic, quote unquote, legal ramifications of being a superhero in this way, which is straight from like the Charles Soule stuff, who we've talked about was like the Columbia Law grad that came in and wrote Daredevil, where he talks about like the constitutional implications of like a hero potentially going through the justice system and having a separate identity that's actually conferred legal status. And that's from Soule stuff, but also Zdarsky stuff and Bendis's, like the White Tiger plot is straight from Bendis, but it's kind of being combined here with stuff from Zdarsky. And it's my point is, it's all like, it gets my mind racing in terms of possibilities, because I know how a lot of these different stories pan out, and I can see it all going like so many different ways. And it's just like this to me is now like the gold standard in how you do a comic book adaptation, like where you pull the things that work and you combine things that can be combined, and you let that material actually drive the narrative.
That gets me so fired up to hear that from you, because I think I was watching the first 2 episodes from a totally different perspective, in just that I don't know the comics, and I'm kind of taking some of the Netflix history with it, but I'm kind of just watching as like an MCU fan and a film fan. Like, how are they going to make this capture some of that feel from Netflix? But, one of the biggest questions I had was the end of season 3 of Daredevil on Netflix was so perfect. Not only was the season perfect, but as to your point, we had explored a lot of stuff. Like, Fisk has already been in jail twice and gotten out twice, and now he's going back to jail. And Matt is coming from nothing and building up into something and becoming a hero. So I was a little bit wondering, like, what is the follow-up to that? So I still don't know the answer, because I've only seen 2 episodes and I don't know where it's going. But the fact that what you have seen gets you excited about the possibilities based off what you know from the comics, that's enough for me to be like, okay, so there's something else out there that they could do. And I've heard from reviewers that the finale, for example, is unbelievable. So if the plane does get landed,
that's
even
exciting.
If there's some lulls in the middle, exactly. But if the plane gets landed, and the way they're talking about season 2, which has already begun filming,
man,
like I saw Charlie Cox say it's like the greatest thing he's ever read is season 2. Now, again, they're going to say that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But
that
gets me excited that there is wiggle room of places they could take this.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really, really great time because of that. Like, it's always fun to read the comics that these shows are based on, in movies, but because Daredevil comics are so great and because they're pulling from so many things in a way that feels like they're really honoring these runs, like I do think this is a really good time for people to jump in if they want. And so we'll kind of have recommendations as we're going through as things get spotted, but it's Organic Price Books has a ton of not all of them, but a lot of these in stock. And so we'll kind of try to point people there as well.
Promo code friends from work if you head that direction. Okay, I have some stuff to say. Let's take a quick break. So I hesitate to even start with this right now after the break, just because I loved this so much. And in general, I think this is going to be top tier. I'm so excited to see where it goes. I literally posted social media reactions with tears in my eyes because I was so excited about what was happening. Only 30 minutes in. But I want to say, you brought up like Fisk being the mayor. Something about the second episode, not quality. I wasn't quite as engaged as I was during the first episode. And I think it's because it's more of a slow burn for sure. Like, but I was sitting there a little bit wondering, like, I do wonder where it is going. And I think that's going to be the beauty of what they're messing with. Like, I can't tell if Fisk is actually trying, like you said, to be a good mayor, or is he, like Matt is trying to ultimately use it to some other way. Like, I thought that part was really cool. And that, like, they show him in his first day in office, and it's a little bit like, oh, I read this feeling of, is this what I really want? Because like now I won the election. Great. But now it's like, I got to like shake hands and kiss babies and go to meetings. And it's like, wait, that's not like what I was used to. He's used to just leveraging people, killing people, like just keeping things going. And so, but I think they're wrestling with that. My point is, so I think that's all the right call, but just through 2 episodes, I was like 10 out of 10 when I called you. And then like investment level, just, I'm an 8 for the second episode. Like, the quality didn't fall off. It's all the same writing and tone and all that. But we'll just see where it goes. We'll see where it goes on that front. I guess I would say my only 2 questions would be, that would be one. And my only other critique was, it was really, really fun to see Daredevil like swinging and more acrobatic. Like we talked about how in the Netflix series, there's literally none of that. That was fun. There were a couple times where maybe it looked a little funny. I thought. So
it didn't look quite right to me, but I'm glad that they're going for it. Like I think they're going in the right direction, but it's not like,
we are so far from the people who will take a screenshot of that, post it on Twitter and be like, look, Marvel sucks. So that is not what I'm saying. Like, dude, Marvel released a clip of Daredevil fighting Dex, which I thought was by and large unbelievably awesome.
Yeah.
And there's already like some of the comments are people like, looks like crap, worse words than that. Like, looks like this and faking this. I'm like, dude, just enjoy something for once in your life. Oh my gosh. I even saw Brandon Davis posting a story about that, where he's like, can I just like something? Like, because you post something online and everybody has to be like, this and this and this. Go back for a second and watch some of season 1 and 2 of Daredevil. There are punches that look funny. Yeah. Like when Elektra dies to the ninja, there's some kicks that are like, there's no way that connected. It looks kind of goofy. But for some reason, people remember these things in a certain way that it's like, oh no, it was perfect. And anything now that Disney's going to do is awful. I'm like, there's this vibe online from some people that I just can't understand. Like, just like it. You're getting your favorite character on screen in cool ways. And they're all trying to make the best thing possible for you. And then you're just going to post online that you think it's stupid. So I'm not that guy. That's my rant.
Right.
But there were a couple shots that weren't like the best CGI I've ever seen. So that's what I'll say. I would say I was a little bit less invested in the second episode, and there were a couple shots of CGI that were like, other than that, flawless. So
and I'm not even sure that it's a CGI thing for me as much as it is the kind of imagining of it. Like, I'm just not quite sure that they have nailed down what that movement should look like. Because the thing about like Spider-Man swinging,
that's a good point.
You have to fall back on that he's got super strength and agility and like. But if you see Matt
and by the way, I
like
saw behind the scenes of season 2, I think, where Matt's on a wire. So like it might not even be a CGI thing to your point, because they are sometimes maybe physically wiring him down. So maybe it's like what you're saying. It's just the vision of the execution hasn't been dialed.
Yeah,
yet.
like they need to figure out what it looks like for him to be like. I almost feel like they need to recreate some of what they did for Natasha in across the Infinity Saga, like this sort of like graceful, like light on your feet movement. And I think that that's a little hard with Daredevil because they also kind of want it to feel weighty, like physically weighty, like he's going to hit someone and it's going to hurt. Like they don't want it to be too acrobatic, like too Tom Hollandy. But
exactly.
So I think that they're just going to have to figure out like exactly what the sweet spot is.
Right. But so then let's just right away. That's my negative. Let's switch to the positive. Didn't you think the actual? Okay, let's just start with the bar sequence for a second. That's one of my big takeaways is that the bold decision to kill Foggy, but the actual execution of the whole sequence to me, I thought was the right call. Like Dex sets up basically like a fake call so that Matthew leaves. He then just shoots Foggy in the chest. Brutal. Dex is on some crazy psychopath, like, I don't know what revenge trip.
Question, did you get a sense that there's more there that we're going to...
I think so. I think we don't know the answer to that yet, and I think we're going to learn more. Like, because I started thinking about, is it just revenge? Like maybe when he was paralyzed in the penthouse at the end of season 3, he overhears Fisk in the room telling Matt, like, I know who you are, and I'm going to go after Foggy and Karen, and maybe that's the only way he puts together, this is Matt Murdock, that's his friends, Karen and Foggy, right? Because I'm trying to think, like, why else would he even know?
Yeah, no, that's probably true.
So I'm guessing he overhears that. I don't know if he's then just on a revenge trip. I think we're not supposed to know more.
But I do think that there's something there because, like, even in the court hearing...
Right. He says, I have nothing to say.
Yeah, like, but he's also clearly, like, whenever Matt talks about him as a cold-blooded killer that did it, you know, for nothing other than some like misguided revenge or whatever. I think the look that we get from Dex is not a like, yeah, I'm crazy and I love killing people look. It's a little bit more of a like,
he's part of a plan or a cog in a machine or
like almost like this contempt, like you don't understand what's really going on here kind of a look.
Yeah. You know, you've said this before. I don't think they're doing this here, but one thing that's getting really exciting is, you know, in the Spider-Man video game, the raft is right there in the harbor of New York. And we know in the MCU, the raft is not. It's like in the ocean somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Somewhere.
But you brought this up in the Brave New World episode. I do kind of like this idea of like all these villains being assembled in like these different jails. Like in the Spider-Man video game, the first one, one thing that's really fun is that, you know, Doc Ock goes and breaks out all these villains from the raft and you have to like re-incarcerate like, you know, 10 different people. But I kind of like the idea that we now have tabs of like, you know, Poindexter was in there and I wonder if they're exploring some of that like he's going to jail intentionally or like Rikers, like I don't know. Yeah. I just think it's fun. Like this idea that someone could come in and like let them all out. And then it's kind of like I talked about with,
which would fit with some of the Devil's Reign stuff that.
Okay. And I would love like a 6v6 small level battle, like Spider-Man and Daredevil and maybe some of the Thunderbolts, like Bucky, and Yelena, let's say those 4 versus like Fisk and a Scorpion and Vulture and Poindexter and you know what I mean? Or maybe the Punisher's helping. Like that'd be kind of a fun little like mini showdown, not like the galaxy's ending. Anyways, that's a huge tangent. But
there are some really fun like Battle of Hell's Kitchen moments that play out in that way, like on a very street level. Like the kind of thing that I think we probably would have loved to see in the Defenders, but never did. Like,
exactly.
This kind of having to defend the neighborhoods sort of vibe, not like even the whole city.
Right. Okay, but anyways, that was a tangent. I just thought like the execution of it, like Foggy going down, Karen's acting was amazing.
Oh, dude, yeah.
And then the smoke grenade into the bar. I felt the horror of people like trying to get out of there. Dex is on a rampage. He's shooting people. He's back to his old ways of throwing whatever random crap he can get his hand on, throwing at people. The way you see their silhouettes, then it knocks down the wall. Then the fight continues in like a very Netflix one-shot way up the stairs. They keep the energy from Netflix of Matt gets tired. Like they both get tired on the stairs.
Yeah.
Which is like a thing that Daredevil does in the first 3 seasons. Like, there's these reminders in the middle of these fights. Oh yeah, he's a human. Like he's out of breath.
Yeah.
And he's so
like
good at taking
with
the punch.
all the stuff.
Yeah. And he's got knives in him and it's really grotesque in the same level that Netflix was. And then like they get to the roof and Matt, I felt so much heartbreak with Matt going like, why? But then they're clearly in this show leaning more into his hyper senses, like the way Matt can hear Foggy has a problem. And then the camera lens zooms in, like narrows. It's almost like they're showing us like narrow in on this conversation.
Yeah.
And then like Matt's hearing all these different voices. They're leaning into that in all these episodes.
Yeah.
But him hearing the heartbeat, then on the roof screaming like, no. And then Dex smiles and laughs when he says like, why would you do that, dude? And he laughs and then he throws him off. And it's just, I thought a pretty cool looking shot of just
the sound
straight
effect.
Just straight up a guy falling off a 4-story building and just on the ground. And it was like, oh gosh, this is brutal. And then Matt like literally realizing I just killed somebody and leaving his mask off, even though someone sees him, just like, I don't care. Like it's all over for me. Foggy's dead. Karen's screaming. She's going to be so pissed. And I just killed someone out of rage. And I just thought that moment, then cutting to the credits and then coming out of that with Matthew, like drinking coffee a year later, like I have chills right now. That whole thing to me was just like, wow. That's like my big takeaway, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was like, it reminded me of what we've talked about over and over again about Endgame, that idea of kind of giving you a lot of the
good point. What you thought you were going to get.
Yeah. Like at the very top before even really the like cold open, or as the cold open before the credits roll. So
for those of you who don't know, for Steve Rogers, we talk about how in Endgame, like the first 15 minutes are kind of like the movie you thought Endgame was going to be. It's like they have to get together, they have to hunt down Thanos, they find him, they kill him. And then it's like, oh, that's the movie you thought you were going to get, and it's only 20 minutes in. Now here's what it's actually about. And it's very similar here.
Like I kind of love, again, instead of the Netflix style pace, like instead of like learning that Bullseye's like out of prison in the first episode, then in like the second episode you see him like get a costume, and then like the third episode you see him find out where Foggy is, and the fourth episode like I kind of
and that way they're assuming that you know the Netflix stuff. There was a lot of times I feel like they assumed that, you know, like they're asking you to carry over your knowledge of Poindexter, so that you don't have to do him getting a suit and him, here's why he's pissed and blah, blah, blah. They can do a non-linear storytelling kind of thing by later filling in why he did it, because you have that baggage. And you actually texted me about that. Like one question you had about Fisk, which I pushed back on. Bring that up for a second. That'd be fun. Yeah.
I think, one part of it is I'm going to do this, I think, before, or at some point in these early episodes. Like I just want to go back and rewatch the season 3 finale, because I remember the things that happen in broad strokes, like what we talked about on the saga so far. But like I want to remember some more details about like where exactly like the relationships were all left and like the final words. And I think that would have, like, because you've been putting the video together, I think that stuff was more familiar.
Just brushed up on it a little bit.
So I think that probably changed the perspective a bit, but it does make me curious for people that didn't watch the Netflix show, like on the opposite end of the spectrum, which I know will be people. Like there are people that are MCU fans that probably never wanted to go back and
some of our listeners.
Yeah. So I think I'm curious if that comes off as confusing or too rushed, or if it's actually better to not try to, like, is it one of those things where like if they had spent any more time on it, it would have just kind of messed with the pacing and almost made it like, if you're going to do this much, you need to now do a full season. Like if you're going to do like a little bit of the classic thing, would you have had to do like a full episode or 2 or 3? So I think
I think if you've never seen it, you would, like with Poindexter specifically, you just kind of be like, wow, this is some psychopath that Matt knows. But I think the show is going to touch on it again. So I think if I had never seen it, I'd be like, well, there's this crazy guy that's now going to jail, but we're going to come back to him. We've even seen in the trailer shots of him in jail. So there's something more there.
There's a part of me that I think almost would have preferred, and there are reasons why they didn't do it this way, but I could imagine, like, if this were a comic, you would probably pick up where you met Matt after the credits. Like, that would be the first scene in the first episode, and then you would maybe see like Foggy's, like, you know, in memorial funeral pamphlet thing around and recognize like Foggy died, but you don't know why. And you don't know what happened and like how it brought Matt. And then I think maybe on like a future episode, you would then get an extended flashback back to this era of like Foggy and Karen. And then you finally understand.
But you see why they wanted to do a shocking thing right off the bat, right?
For sure.
Like,
no,
there's reasons why you'd be like, we're going to go bold right out of the gate.
And I don't think think that they did. Like, it wasn't the wrong choice, but I think that it happened so fast that it almost took me a second to get my bearings.
It does happen fast. And to your point, if you haven't seen the Netflix stuff, I think you'd be moved that some guy just died that's clearly Matt's friend, but you don't have any of the baggage of Foggy being dead yet. So they are relying on you having seen this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, you'd be like, wow, Matt lost a friend, but I don't even know who this guy is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, almost like what Severance has done, like we were saying, like this past episode, where you're finally like, now after getting more and more invested, you're understanding what happened. But I think I appreciate the fact that they're not doing too much like mystery box stuff here. Like they're not, like, I don't want the whole run to be about like what happened to Foggy.
It's definitely got a Homecoming vibe in that we praised Spider-Man Homecoming for not trying to tell the Uncle Ben and the origin story, because in the context of when it was made, you had all those Spider-Man stories of like, dude, we get it. He gets bit by a spider, blah, blah, blah. And there's mixed reviews on that. But I think it's probably wise to not, like, I like them going just right in and not slow playing it. Cause like, for people who have seen it like me, I know how he becomes Daredevil. I know that they're friends. I know about Nelson and Murdoch and Page. Like, I don't need to re-see that story. In fact, Nelson, Murdoch, and Page is like already kind of exhausting by season 3, because they're kind of together, then they're not together, then she's not a client, then we add her, and it's like, then Karen finds out and we have to tell her. And I was a little bit kind of like over that anyways. That sounds horrible.
No, but again, I think it's because you never had the moment like Matt now has in his firm with Kirsten, where it's like, oh, it's going well. Like things are going well.
Oh, that's a good point.
And we like it. And it's like, you don't have something to break because it's always broken. And so I think it is like a hard, like, I think it was hard for me a little bit because I wish that we had gotten that. Like, I think that I would have liked to have gotten at least a sense of how Matt got from the end of season 3 to back in a spot where like they have a flourishing practice and the three of them are close again. And I think he and Karen are in a relationship again.
But just like real lighthearted question here for a second, like surface level, what do you think? Why can't you draw the line between where it ended? I think maybe, again, go watch season 3 of Daredevil.
That's the thing.
Because like at the very end of season 3, he exchanges that crazy, sequence with Fisk.
Yeah.
But Fisk does go to jail. So does Vanessa. They go into separate cars. They're not allowed to say goodbye. And Matt does like reconcile, like throughout that season, he reconciles. Like in the finale, he says to Foggy, like, I'm going to go rogue, blah, blah, but they're talking and they're already kind of back. And I guess I don't know why it would be such a leap to go, okay, after he did that, he's been in Hell's Kitchen successfully winning cases because he's good at telling when people are lying. And he's just being Daredevil for low-level crimes when he has to. And they kind of like became friends again. Like, why is that not an easy line for you to draw? I'm not saying that as a jerk. I'm just curious.
No. I mean, I think it's because it's not that it's a hard line to draw. Like, I should clarify. I'm not saying it feels out of sync or like feels like a left turn. It's more just, I feel like there's a chapter missing that I would have, like, if you told me that there was another season between season 3 and Born Again that I had never seen, I would believe you, because I would view that as like, well, this is how we kind of wind up back at this status quo. Like to me, it's like
you had the same question with Ross from Brave New World. That's kind of interesting. I guess I just don't view it as like linear as you. Like I'm allowing myself to fill in the gaps in my head.
No, I mean,
versus like the next day, here's this.
No, and I'm not saying that it has to be that. Like, I mean, I think it's like to me, it's like, okay, you end the Avengers and you recognize that now like Steve Rogers is back, and it kind of makes sense that whenever you meet up with him in Winter Soldier, the natural thing is like he's just working for Fury still. Like, you don't really have to figure out like, wait, but how did he get from there to here? And it's not that you needed to see the immediate aftermath. It just kind of makes sense. But I think that across the Netflix series, you had this sort of like, Matt can't figure out this balance between these characters. Matt like can't operate the law firm in a way that's fair to Karen and Foggy. Like, you see them move on. You see Karen like have this whole career as a journalist. Like, it seems like things happened that brought them back together to like restart the firm, and that made Matt comfortable being Daredevil again after what Dex did in the Daredevil suit. Like, where I feel like there was a whole thing in season 3 where he was kind of even more uncomfortable with the idea of wearing the suit.
Yeah, but at the very, very end, the police say, that's not Daredevil. And they go, how do you know that? Because that is. And he's standing at the top. So, I mean, I think publicly they're going to clear his name.
Yeah, but I guess I'm just like, you see what I'm saying,
yeah,
though.
I do. Sorry. I'm just giving little anecdotes.
No. I think ultimately it's the reason why I'm not upset about it. But it's why, if there had been, this is what I said the other night. Like, I remember hearing that at one point Echo as a series was supposed to feature more Matt Murdock, not Daredevil, but a little bit of Matt, and show his practice. And obviously that didn't happen. But I almost wonder if like that's something that I'm missing. Like, No
Way Home helps a little bit.
No Way Home helps. But even then, it's like you don't get any sense that like Foggy and Karen are in the picture in No Way Home. Like,
yeah. Yep.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying that there is a contradiction. I'm just saying I'm talking about is like, I know Matt's a lawyer.
You hate it.
He's always been a lawyer.
I'm getting what you're saying.
So No Way Home, he's a lawyer. That doesn't tell me anything about the status quo. Like, that can mean that Matt's like he's now a superhuman lawyer, because we kind of see that in She-Hulk. That can mean that he like has no relationship with Foggy. That can mean that he works at some big firm like Jen. Like, it just felt a little, there was a part of me that mourned, like, yeah, I kind of would have just liked to see what this was for a second so that I can fully feel what's being lost. Because the last time I really saw these characters on screen, they had a lot of shit to work out, you know?
Okay, here's the thing. I got a rapid fire of a bunch of stuff real fast because we're going to run out of time. I really am enjoying this retired police chief who stumbles upon Matt and then Matt hires him. I think that actor's killing it, and I think it's a really kind of interesting plot line. It's an interesting stand-in for some of the vibe, I guess, that we had with Nelson, Murdoch, and Paige. To have this new girl, but then also this new guy that knows who Matt is a fun dynamic for me.
I like it too, especially because he's like someone that has that like the law enforcement background. So it's like he understands a little bit of what's like he sees what Daredevil is, and he knows what Matt is.
Didn't you love the BB Urich thing? Come on.
Yeah, I did.
To get some Urich in the story, and it's a journalist and in a new way where she's kind of making her own video, I thought was really cool.
Oh, and then that scene between her and Fisk where he's like, I knew your father.
Yes. He freaking murdered her father.
Yeah.
The cinematography to me is so special. Just there's something I want other Marvel shows and films to take some cues. Whenever you can, use locations. Use locations.
Yeah.
Use locations. I say it all the time. don't use the studios as much. And there's just something really gritty to the fact that they just went on the street in New York and they put a camera at something, and they did. They go into an apartment, they put a camera there. You know, it's like, if it's not that hard to find, please do it.
By the way, thinking about some of the stuff with Fisk in those videos, I'm trying to remember, because again, I feel like you have a better working memory of the Netflix stuff. Is there something, when they talk about Fisk crushing someone's head, are they referring to like the car door scene, or is there another scene that like you think we're not supposed to have been aware of yet?
That's the scene I think they're referring to, but I am with you that like, how would anyone know that? Because that body was thrown in the river, and like he was never caught for that.
Well, yeah. There's this famous moment in like the Ultimate Spider-Man comic where Fisk is the reason he's finally arrested is they get him caught on tape like crushing a guy's skull with his bare hands. And
did you almost say erected, by the way? That's what you almost said.
What did I say?
Arrested. Arrested. That's twice now I'm having to debate if I have to bleep you out for the first time ever on this podcast.
Wow. Look, it's a different era now.
Yeah, now
it's Daredevil time.
Welcome to Daredevil time. Robbie just gets potty mouth everywhere. But anyways, there's a famous comic where he squishes his head. So maybe what they're implying is some other time. I think what they're really trying to do is just really remind you this is the same Fisk. You know, like the cop who...
And people know.
The police chief was like, dude, I know what you've been doing. Like, you've been killing people. Like, how many people have you killed? Like, I think they're trying to be like, this is the same Fisk. Like, he's trying to change his legacy. How much, we'll see. And to that point, like, it's just so special for me when you get a Spider-Man shout out.
Man, I know. I was waiting to talk about it. It's
probably my most... Would that be my most anticipated, like, team up right now? If like it might be like if, and they can't do this. That's the thing what sucks. But like,
I know
it would make so much sense for him to like swing in one time and then like disappear. But specifically, it just does my heart good. It doesn't take a lot from these showmakers to do this, but the little tie-ins like Brave New World does. But the little tie-ins here of like Fisk saying a guy with a skull on his chest, or a guy dressed like a spider, or Daredevil,
which like
that's all I need to hear.
Well, and specifically to hear Kingpin talk about Spider-Man,
yes,
is such a fun moment. Like that is it's a small thing, but it's also a big moment for Spider-Man fans and Daredevil fans. Like there's a big thing happening. He plays such a
huge role in the first Spider-Verse film, you know, Kingpin, and he's a large role in the first Spider-Man video game. It's the first mission.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's just the crossover that at some point they have to figure out. Like, it would make so much sense.
I wonder, like, I feel like I've read some comments, and I never like to read too much into these because I just think it leads to disappointment. Speaking of the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, it's like the MJ philosophy, I guess. But I am curious what kind of cameos they would be able to get away with in a show like this from like a budget perspective. Like Spider-Man would probably be no from both budget and because of the Sony stuff. But I wonder, like, is there like who maybe Kate Bishop is someone that makes sense to throw in?
Would be sick. We know that Kamala's father is going to be in this for a second. You know, she's just across.
That's
she's
right.
just
I forgot
across
about
the body of water there. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I think more and more these showrunners are really trying to put focuses on the characters they're making, which I get. Like, you know, every film can't be an Avengers film. Like, I heard them talking about how they debated that Bruce Banner and the Hulk might have been in Brave New World, and they ultimately decided, quote, it's a Sam Wilson movie. You know, we want to Sam Wilson, which I understand the sentiment, but I think, like, for example, with Spider-Man, if it wasn't for the Sony rights, I don't think they'd care about budget. I think he'd be in a ton of stuff because it's what some Marvel fans want. At this point, it's what we're wanting.
It's Spider-Man. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, they would move, like, they would get subscribers to Disney Plus if Spider-Man showed up and the word of mouth spread.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think money is the issue. It's just the stupid Sony thing. but what others could they do? I think I'm at the point, like in the middle of phase 5 now. I've gone from, okay, cool, we met new characters, we've learned stuff in phase 4, here's how it's different, here's the fallout of Endgame, and now in the middle of phase 5, I've kind of shifted to, I'm ready for the connectivity. I'm ready for cameos. Like, I want to see how it is affecting the Thunderbolts. How is it affecting Sam?
Yeah.
How is it affecting Doctor Strange? What's he doing? I'm at the point where I'm ready for that stuff. So if they can give me any, great.
They're like escalating the anti-vigilante thing from Fisk so quickly, and I love that, because I do think that it's going to be, maybe they never reference each other. That's fine. Although, yeah, if you did bring like Kate Bishop into this, that would be an easy connection between her and Yelena, and kind of Ms. Marvel, since we got that scene at the end of the Marvels. So you could see how it could build out. But even if it doesn't, it's just going to be so like of the same tone, this like the villains are in charge kind of moment, that that makes me excited. Like they're like everything you and I were kind of saying they could be doing here a while back, as these shows, the show and the movie started to line up some. It seems like they're really leaning into,
no doubt,
and that is just like
an exciting way, maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun potential there.
2 final things for me, unless you have anything else. I got 2 more things. Briefly.
You go first.
Okay, really briefly, I would just say that I do appreciate, I brought up the police chief, which I'm blanking on his name, actor. This feels like it's going to be one of those shows like I always praise WandaVision for, in that Marvel did a great job of casting and the side actors. Like, it feels like all the additions we're getting here are wins for me. I talked about BB Urich. I talked about the police chief, the girl we were talking about from Severance, and I forget the actress's name. I apologize. But I also think Matt's new kind of girlfriend, that intro scene to them
Heather
at the coffee shop was great.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
also
I'm
from
like
the Born Again era.
Okay. I don't know her as a character, but I'm totally bought into their chemistry.
Yeah.
And like, I'm kind of pulling for them. So it's only been 1 episode of them basically, and I'm into it. So
and
I think
her as the therapist for the Fisks is fascinating.
And then I think very fascinating to end on, and like how legit is that? And like, I don't know what's going on there, because Fisk has got that crony that's kind of creepy. And like, like what was the point of her signing his book? Like, did he steal her signature for something? Or like he says like, no, thank you, and then walks away. It's very weird. But just again, placing some intrigue there.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like a forgery, like putting her in a spot where she can't ever like disclose things that she hears, which she wouldn't be able to do legally anyway, but because maybe it gives them like leverage over her. Yeah.
And then like the guy who played White Tiger, I was pretty into, and I don't know anything about White Tiger other than White Tiger is a girl character in Spidey and His Amazing Friends.
Oh, that's
who can
funny.
talk to animals. But they actually gave a shout out to this character's special amulet or whatever.
Yeah.
Mystical.
Yeah.
So like inside of Daredevil, they're acknowledging that like he may have another power if he has this.
Oh yeah. No, for sure.
So again, I guess I'm just praising my final 2 things are I'm praising the side actors and the casting, and I'm interested about this White Tiger thing. I don't know what this is and what that could be, but I'm intrigued.
One, that is that storyline in the Bendis comic is such a great kind of Matt trying to wed his role as Daredevil vigilante with lawyer defending Hector. So I am excited to see that. And I think that's one of those things where it fits so well within the context of this kind of Mayor Fisk.
That prison conversation was so good. Just like in Brave New World, like the shot of it, but
I
also
thought about that. Yeah.
The shot of it, but also like what they're talking about, where it's like so ironic that Matt's getting on him for not telling him.
But it's also like, it's kind of Matt doing his favorite thing ever, which is like beating himself up, but he's just kind of, he's like directing it at someone else, but it's clearly, which by the way, we have to like talk about the actual last scene of episode 2 before we finish this. Cause that was like the final Matt loses it moment was so well done, I thought.
I was just thinking, does he have a way to prove that these are dirty cops and he was being attacked? You know, did he like set up any kind of camera or something? Because otherwise he's either murdered or severely injured 2 cops too.
I know. And I mean, there's no like, there's no, well, and one, if there was a third party, like if there was a witness there, then they would also have seen him do things that he shouldn't be able to do. So it's kind of like worst of like, I guess worst case scenario either way.
But Matt takes those guys to the cleaners. Oh my
and
gosh.
It's so
when they
like
they put the gun to his head and then he's like, all right, here we go.
He's like,
that's
please don't.
That's when you get the arm breaking. And
yeah, man. It was like
grotesque.
Because they make it feel like that last kick when he hits Matt, it's like you hear like a rib crack or something. Like it gets right to the point where you're like, when is he gonna like do something? And I'm really curious to see. And again, I have not watched episode 3, so I have no idea. But given some of the comics context here, there's a really like the arc that kind of kicks off the Zdarsky run is Daredevil fighting somebody, and it's not intentional. It's kind of this freak accident, but he like hits a guy who then like hits the ground / like the wall behind him in such a way where it breaks his neck and kills him.
Like and Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's this whole thing where it's like, Daredevil's a murderer now, and then Matt kind of having to wrestle with like, do I subject myself to the justice system because I've always said that that's how things should be handled. And I did wonder something about the way one of those guys hit the ground in that at the end of that fight worries me a little bit, that like you might be dealing with someone that like he might have actually like really hurt one of those cops.
I think that's
Maybe
what the scream was at the end. No, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like he realizes, if I just killed these guys,
Yeah, I mean, if that, which I like, the thing about that is it's not so much that Matt is afraid that people will find out that he did it. It's more like Matt has such this like Catholic guilt moral compass that he would never be able to not like, he would not rest unless he felt like that he had like followed his own preaching, I guess. Like actually do what he's always saying, like someone like Frank Castle should.
The grace and retribution conversation was so good. Just as a shout out back to his faith, and a shot of him looking at the church,
that conversation was the whole like diner thing. My final thought that I think is so strange, that the timing of it, and I'm curious to see like what the conversation is around this show as it comes out, because Marvel has now twice unintentionally made itself like very like politically topical, where it's like, I mean, because Brave New World, so many of the reviews, the write-ups that I read talked about like, oh, you've got like the red president and obviously the movie was in development for so long.
I felt like the hype was that it was going to be, and then it really wasn't as political as far as a parallel to Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, well no, because it wasn't meant to be.
But now this was not as much hype about it, and it feels like it's more literal.
And the funny thing there is like, and again, this was obviously made prior to the November election. The funny thing though is like Charles Soule, who introduced this Mayor Fisk like element, like he wrote that book in 2017, and it I think very much was like a not so veiled reference to the Trump presidency, and it kind of follows the arc in a certain way. And it's funny that like then this was adapted kind of post-Trump presidency, so I don't think that it was in that way meant to do that, although it's adapting something that was. But now we just happen to find ourselves like back in a moment where it's all the conversation again, and I wonder if like how much that's going to come up once this show comes out. Not like the actual political conversations around it, but I'm just wondering if that's something that people are going to assume is like the intent of the series, and if that's going to create any level of controversy, or just because Vincent D'Onofrio is doing such a great job, nobody cares.
The answer is yes, it probably will, because there's always some people, but probably not to a crazy degree. I gotta go, but it did make me think about, this is way too early to say this, But I'm interested to see where they go with Mayor Fisk. I don't know where they could go. I love the Echo shout-outs, by the way. Love the tie-in there. And by the way, they really leaned into how traumatic that was for him. Like, they kept leaning into that.
What I love about it, too, is I feel like it explains, it offers an explanation for why he's running for mayor, if they bear it out. But it's like he wanted this like admiration from Maya that she ultimately wouldn't give him. And it's almost like he's now turning to the city of New York as a whole and trying to become this like hero, beloved figure of the city. And
that's a good
so
call.
I like the tie there.
I was just going to say, I think it would be kind of fun. It's too early to tell. I don't know what they're going to do with the Mayor Fisk thing. I think it would be kind of fun if he doesn't have a major slip up by the end of the season. We always talk about villains not dying, but in this case, even if Fisk doesn't die, which I don't think he will, his like career dying, it might be fun to end the season with Fisk getting more and more power. And he's going from mayor to now all of a sudden he's like running for Congress with Val or something, or he's like a higher up, but he's still, so he doesn't mess up publicly, but he still has this underlying corruption. And like, I just think about how sick it would be if like, he's now not just a mayor, but he's like, let's say, I don't know what, the governor of New York. And then while he's the governor, you like meet Norman Osborn now in New York, and Val intersects with that. And it's like, now all of a sudden, like New York is corrupt as a whole. And what does that look like? I just think that maybe be right now, where I stand, I reserve the right to change my opinion, but that could be a more fun kind of ending than Daredevil takes him down, he loses his mayorship, and he goes to jail.
No, I think it's like one of the things that I really respected about the end of the Charles Soule run is he introduces Mayor Fisk, and then he plays it out for a while, but then you end the series kind of thinking Daredevil's going to take him down, and he doesn't. So it carries over into the next run, and is like a big feature of that. Like it's not a thing that is easily dealt with. So like there's a part of me that would be a little bummed if this is totally played out by the end of the season. Even if Fisk is no longer mayor, to your point, I would like to at least see him kind of retain the like top tier status.
That's all I got. You good?
Yep.
Let's hear from all of you guys. Did you like it as much as we did? The ffwpodcast.com. There's a contact form on there and a Discord channel link on there where you can chime in or leave comments on any of the places that you are listening to this episode. Check out those comics. Let's go and just let's get our minds right for what is about to be a great 7 or 8 week run in the MCU. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy this podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we'll see you right back here next week. Same time. I think we're going to have our episode Tuesday night, right when the episode's out. Same time here on this podcast on Friends from